Hi, this is Karina with Infinite Life Mastery, and welcome back for our video number 2 in the series of the 3 essential elements of success in divorce decision making process. So the second element is probably the most difficult for moms to accept, especially if we are the ones who are initiating a divorce or initiating marriage solution support. So, I just gave it away. So the second element is support. Support, but not just support. The essential part of this is proper support. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Proper support, in my view, in the context of divorce decision making, is support that truly understands what you're going through in the context of your life. It is someone who is able to understand you at an emotional level and then also have an ability to be neutral enough to give you a holistic way, a true view of how to make what you want actually be true, how to get the results where you want to be a reality. Basically, how proper support in the context of divorce decision making is someone who can understand what it really feels like to be in that place. It is someone who can really understand what elements are required to be considered in that place. And also someone who really understands the implications, not just for you, but also for your kids, not just now, but also in the future. So these are the essential elements of proper support. And the next level up of this proper support is very specific support. And what I discovered is that you really need quite a team. And you need a team well before the paperwork gets filed. Because when paperwork gets filed, you're in a very different place. Before paperwork gets filed, there's a team that can be assembled that could be your true support, true proper support. And the same thing with when you just go in for any marriage counselor and that's the only route you know, that's also, you already are in this different place. So knowing as you're in this decision-making limbo, even if you don't know which way you're going, surrounding yourself again with proper support that gives you the ability to really understand where you are. That is the very first step of that proper support layer. And as you have that, as you explore it, you begin to understand what other elements for you, that is your situation specific, that you need to bring in. So for example, if you are seriously considering divorce, speaking to a, as I like to call, non-attached financial advisors, and or at least starting off with very knowledgeable non-attached and ethical real estate agents that are also not part of your family, that could help you to really understand where you are in terms of your finances and assets and anything else that could be put in the mix. That is something to consider if you're going in the route of the divorce really only. When you're considering taking the route of repairing your marriage, there are other elements that you need to have in terms of that proper support. And so let me talk about that as well. So a lot of people that I spoke to have referred to looking out for different books and how to repairing their marriages. They've also talked to marriage counselors, but a lot of times it was either one-sided, or then they drag their spouses to the marriage counselor. And I think that process in itself is not very constructive. So having the proper support in this situation I would see it as looking for the options of how you can perhaps work on your own mindset, as we talked about in the previous video, first, and really recognize where you fit in this space, and recognize that, do I need help first? Maybe if I take that step for me first, then I can start seeing certain things, and I could be even more, the marriage counseling could be more productive for both of us. So having that support first is important, okay? And then stepping into one other element is to see, well, perhaps counselor is a good starting point, but considering alternative to just counseling, considering relationship coaches. There's just like any coaching, there's just such a slew of different types, and I think that's a space that is still growing for the relationship coaches, but finding one that could work with the couple is, I think it's ideal, and in fact essential, because what relationship coaches really bring into that process, they really allow a whole new way of looking at things. Counseling has its own very specific ways and paradigms of how things are looked at and the way that problems are solved. But really good relationship coaches really have the ability to bring couple together from that space of the problem land, as I was talking about in previous video, into the solution land, so that together you can work through these challenges that you have in a very constructive and sustainable way, looking into the future, not just rehashing the past like a lot of counseling models actually have. So finding the proper support that you can really relate to, that feels good for you, and that you can you are going to get value from. So that's a space there. There's one unifying element of support that I believe is one of the most important elements, and I think that's why it's unifying, that you can actually put it as a foundation for either of the decision routes. And that element is self-care. And I believe that having proper self-care as a mom who is making this kind of a difficult decision is an absolute must. Because if you're not going to create time and space and even the budget for the self-care element right now, you are not going to create it during your very difficult time, and you're not going to be in a position to create it afterwards as well. Because if you're not establishing that habit, it's not just going to show up all of a sudden one morning. So working on establishing proper self-care is so essential, and it is the best thing that you can do for your kids as you going through this decision, and then as you taking the steps in a direction of the decision that you've made. Self-care elements could be anything. Whatever it is that gives you life, that is your self-care. And I'm going to do a whole separate video on self-care because I think that's something that so many moms just throw it out of the window thinking that, oh, that's, that's not essential. Oh, that's later. And then guess what happens? They get sick. They get mentally unwell. I've seen some terrible cases in courts where moms have literally been driven into psychotic medications and many other things because the processes just they're not kind. And when moms are not kind to themselves as well, that tends to destroy than really to put together. So I'm not trying to scare you into self-care. That would be kind of sort of counterproductive. But that was kind of a wake up call for me when I was in the process and I had some support system that I had built for myself, and we kept talking about self-care and I kept saying yeah, but I never really got to that space where I allowed myself to do self-care. And when I saw one of these cases that I'm talking about, it just really opened up my eyes, and I said, okay, the first thing I'm doing is doing this self-care element that I've been putting off for a long time. And the way that it made me feel at the end of that process of that self-care moment, it just reconnected me back with life. And I think that is one of the most difficult things in this decision-making limbo, is that you just feel so disconnected from life, from everything that you used to love, because you also don't want to allow yourself to feel any joy because you are trying to make such a heart-wrenching decision. And it doesn't need to be this way, because if you make it such a heart-wrenching decision, you're going to have the heart-wrenching process and you're going to make a heart-wrenching outcome. So let's get you into the space of deep breath, and that it is okay to be in the place where you're at. It is okay. There's a reason why you're going through this. Getting proper support and helping you understand what elements are important for you to consider as you're considering either of the decisions, that is what's really going to get you into a place of true peace and into a decision that you can feel good about and that you can use as your support. You can create that support for yourself during most challenging times, whether as you're rebuilding your marriage, or if you're going through divorce. Okay, so for our next video, I'm going to talk about the last element, and I think that is also really the most, overlooked element of all three. And while the other two are also very essential, this third one I think is going to really tie things together for you. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video. And until then, remember that there's a reason why you are going through this beautiful process of change.